You give your best years to a job, thinking loyalty means something. You sacrifice birthdays, relationships, health, because you believe there's a finish line with a reward waiting. But sometimes, the people at the top are just waiting for the clock to tick a little too close to that reward before they cut the cord. Do you think companies owe us more for our loyalty? Or is it just business? What would have made the situation different for you? Drop a comment and let me know what time it is, where you are, and where you're watching from. I see every one of you. My name is David Keller, and I was 35 years old when my boss fired me 3 months before my pension benefits were supposed to vest. I'd started with the company in my early 20s, bright-eyed, overworked, and eager to prove myself. Over the years, I rose through the ranks in the IT department, led major infrastructure rollouts, trained incoming staff, and even stepped up during a cybersecurity incident that would have brought everything crashing down if I hadn't caught it in time. I wasn't a star, but I was steady, reliable, useful, and I thought that meant something. The day they let me go started like any other. Coffee in hand, I was reviewing server logs when I got a message from HR. Can you come by the conference room at 10? No context, just the kind of message that hits you in the gut before your brain even catches up. When I walked in, my manager, Todd, was already seated. The HR rep, Melissa, wouldn't make eye contact. There were 2 folders on the table, and the air in the room was heavy with forced professionalism. Todd spoke like he was reading from a script. David, we appreciate everything you've contributed, but due to restructuring, we're eliminating your role effective immediately. I didn't say anything at first. I just stared at them, waiting for the punchline. But there wasn't one. It was all very calm, very rehearsed. Severance package, health coverage. We'll support you however we can. All corporate theater. I wasn't just losing a job, I was losing timing. My 12-year anniversary was coming up in 89 days. With it came a pension milestone that would have set my retirement foundation. I wasn't even 36, and I'd done what few people my age managed to do, lock in long-term security through consistency and patience. But they weren't stupid. They'd done the math. Cutting me now saved them a 6-figure obligation over the next few decades. I asked, "So that's it? After all this time?" Todd didn't flinch. "You'll keep what you've vested so far, but the Tier 2 benefit required a full 12 years of service. You understand, I'm sure?" I understood, all right? I understood betrayal. I understood what it meant to be a number in someone's spreadsheet. I packed my things in a quiet fog. No warning. No farewell to my team. Just a box of old cables, a few photos, and the brittle weight of being discarded like I'd never mattered. That weekend, I barely spoke. Emily, my wife, let me process it. But on Sunday afternoon, as we sat on the back steps watching the sun sink, she turned to me and said, "Didn't you say you still have shares in the executive fund?" That was when something inside me clicked. They fired me, but I wasn't out. I was in. Just somewhere they couldn't see me coming from. I didn't sleep much that night. I sat in my home office, the glow of my second monitor casting long shadows as I scrolled through files I'd backed up over the years. Performance reviews, policy updates, old benefit guides. Call it paranoia or just a habit from working in IT. But I kept records. A lot of them. And now, for the first time, I read every line like it might matter. Like it was evidence. That's when I found it. An internal memo from years back about the company's executive pension trust. Buried in the middle was a line that made my chest tighten. Participants in the deferred executive plan retain equity-linked exposure through internal stock pools, subject to standard performance triggers. I'd qualified for entry into that plan 4 years ago when I was promoted to senior IT systems lead. Back then, I'd opted to defer 10% of my bonuses into it instead of cashing out. It was meant for long-term tax benefits. Everyone said it was smart. Now it felt like fate. I still owned a slice of something they couldn't take from me. The pension fund was structured to mirror internal stock performance, meaning if the company grew, so did my deferred pool. But if it crashed, I'd lose too. It was still a gamble, but it was my gamble, and I knew how the system worked better than most. I'd spent years watching leadership shift priorities, blow budgets, over-leverage tech they didn't understand, all for the sake of optics in the next quarterly report. For the first time since that gut-punch layoff, I felt awake. Over the next few weeks, I started connecting with people, old colleagues, vendors, even a few clients I'd helped over the years. Nothing shady, just conversations. Everyone was talking, and morale inside the company was tanking. I heard that 2 of the newer VPs were clashing with Todd over project timelines. I learned they were outsourcing development to a firm overseas that was already behind schedule. The signs were there: chaos in the codebase, outages growing more frequent, turnover rising. I didn't have to sabotage anything. I just had to wait. Meanwhile, I polished my resume and landed a contract position with a mid-sized firm across town. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid well and gave me flexibility. I kept my head down and watched from afar as quarterly earnings slipped just below projections, then further. My deferred fund dropped a bit, but I didn't sell. Most people would panic and cash out, but I knew what was coming. I knew them. Because once you've been in the engine room long enough, you can smell when the gears are grinding dry. Then I saw the filing. It was buried in a Friday evening SEC disclosure. Classic move to dodge headlines. The company was drawing on its credit line. That's not something you do unless you're hurting. Bad decisions were catching up fast. And my little sliver of equity in their pension fund? It was the thread they couldn't cut. I wasn't trying to destroy them. I just wanted to make sure they couldn't forget me. People talk, especially in corporate America, where job security is an illusion and trust is a currency spent fast. A few weeks after that Friday night SEC filing, my phone started ringing. Not with recruiters, but with familiar names from my old building. People I hadn't heard from since the day I was walked out like a criminal. Most were subtle. Some danced around it. But I knew what they were really asking. "What the hell is going on over there, David?" One of the first to reach out was Marcus, a project manager I'd mentored when he was fresh out of grad school. He called under the pretense of grabbing a beer. But halfway through the second round, he leaned in and asked, "Did you know they're cutting 15% of the QA team next month? Todd's calling it realignment, but everyone's bracing for a bloodbath." I didn't flinch. I just let him talk. It was strange, watching the same people who stayed silent when I got cut now scrambling for insight like I was some oracle. They thought I had inside info, maybe even a grudge I'd turn into gossip. But I didn't need to badmouth anyone. Todd was doing that himself, just with memos, missed targets, and mismanagement. Then came Rachel. We'd worked side by side for 6 years. She was sharp, honest, and had a radar for office politics that most people would kill for. When I got fired, she was one of the few who reached out privately, not with pity, but quiet rage. I hadn't heard from her in months, until she sent me a message. "We need to talk, not over the phone." We met in the back corner of a quiet diner, like it was 1983, and we were trading state secrets. She slid a printout across the table. An internal email chain showing how my layoff was timed specifically around pension vesting milestones. Todd had even said it. "If we wait until after Q3, Keller qualifies for Tier 2. We'll take heat now, but it's cheaper long term." There it was, black and white. I stared at it for a long time, not because I was surprised, but because I wasn't. The bastard had written it down. Rachel leaned in. "You could sue them. This is age discrimination. pension interference. But I shook my head. Number, that's their battlefield. I'm playing a different game. I didn't want courtrooms. I wanted time. Because sometimes revenge isn't about going for the throat. It's about letting them choke on their own decisions. So I kept quiet. Let the storm build. Let the investors grumble and the board raise questions. I knew Todd. He was the kind of guy who could talk his way out of a flat quarter. But 2 in a row? 3? That was a different story. That was when the wolves circled. And I'd be watching. Not to gloat, not yet. Just to be ready when the walls started cracking. By the time autumn rolled in, the facade had started to crack. Not publicly, not in headlines or shareholder reports, but in the details, the whispers, missed metrics. The company that once prided itself on bulletproof operations was now dropping tickets, delaying patches, and pushing out buggy releases that would have never cleared the floor back when I was there. But the real damage was inside. Todd, ever the smooth operator, had built his little empire on charm and plausible deniability. But you can only bluff so long before the numbers start speaking for themselves. 2 product launches were delayed, 1 indefinitely. Customer satisfaction scores tanked. HR was swamped with exit interviews from mid-level managers who couldn't take the chaos anymore. Even the execs were rotating. One of the younger VPs left to pursue other opportunities, but everyone knew he jumped before he was pushed. It wasn't long before I heard from Mark Liu, one of the senior developers I used to supervise. We hadn't spoken in a while, but his message came through LinkedIn at 2:14 a.m. You were right. They're losing control. He wasn't the first. There was a quiet network forming now. Ex-employees, disillusioned staff, vendors fed up with unpaid invoices or shifting deadlines. They didn't coordinate out of vengeance. They were just tired, disappointed. Everyone had seen the place go from mission-driven to market-obsessed, from people-first to spreadsheet priority. It wasn't just that the ship was sinking. It was that the captain was denying the water was even rising. Meanwhile, I held. My equity in the pension fund had dipped during the summer slide, but I never touched it. I didn't panic. I knew the people running the place better than most, knew their patterns, their blind spots, their egos. This wasn't about watching them fail just for the pleasure. It was about watching them realize they weren't untouchable, that the people they stepped over on the way up were still watching from below. And then came the Q3 report. It was brutal. They missed earnings by the widest margin in a decade. Analysts tore through the numbers like sharks, pointing out bloated operating costs and declining margins. The stock took a hit, not enough to implode the company, but enough to send board members into closed-door meetings. Enough for headlines to start asking questions. Todd didn't say much publicly. He did what most people in his position do. Tried to reassure the market, blamed the macro environment, and hinted at strategic restructuring. But inside, the pressure was mounting. That's when I got the call. Blocked number, Saturday morning. I let it go to voicemail, but curiosity got the better of me. I hit play and heard a voice I hadn't expected. David, it's Todd. Look, I think we should talk. His voice wasn't cocky anymore. It was tight, controlled, like a man who'd just realized the roof above him had started to crack, and maybe the foundation wasn't as solid as he thought. I didn't call him back right away. I let the voicemail sit for a full day while I worked in my garage, reorganizing tools I hadn't touched in months. There was a strange satisfaction in it. Moving slow while I imagined Todd pacing somewhere in his overpriced condo, chewing the inside of his cheek and wondering if I'd heard the message. Wondering if I'd respond. The power dynamic had shifted, and we both knew it. By Monday morning, he emailed me from his personal account. The subject line was just one word. Lunch? The body said, I'd appreciate a quick conversation. No pressure. My treat. He even signed it with, Hope you're doing well. I almost laughed. Still, I agreed. Not because I owed him anything, but because when a man like Todd wants to meet, you don't turn that down. You listen. You watch. You let him talk too much. We met at a quiet restaurant near the financial district, one of those trendy places where no one speaks above a whisper and every plate looks like it was painted instead of cooked. Todd showed up 5 minutes early, already seated, already sweating a little. He stood when I walked in, offered a handshake. "David," he said like we were old friends. "You look good, relaxed." I sat across from him, didn't respond to the compliment. Just waited. He ordered a sparkling water. I asked for coffee. Then he leaned forward, fingers steepled, trying to look thoughtful. I wanted to say, "I regret how things went down." I raised an eyebrow. "Which part?" He hesitated. "The timing. The way your exit was handled. You were a key contributor for years. I should have fought harder to keep you." It was such a clean lie I almost admired it. "But you didn't." Todd's jaw flexed. "Look, I know you're upset, and I get it, but there's a lot of pressure up there. The board's breathing down everyone's necks and, well, things are shifting. Fast." There it was. The crack! He wasn't here to apologize. He was here because he was cornered. He needed something. Information, reassurance, maybe even forgiveness. I wasn't sure yet, but I stayed quiet long enough for him to keep going. "I know you still have deferred holdings in the executive pool," he said, "and I think we both understand how intertwined our futures are. If the company takes a hit, you lose too." I leaned back. "So what are you offering? Or warning me about?" His smile faltered. "I'm offering perspective. Maybe even a way back in. Consulting, advisory, quiet, off the books. Help us stabilize before Q4. Now that surprised me. He wasn't just nervous. He was desperate, enough to try bringing back the guy he'd fired 3 months before his pension vesting. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so transparent. I stirred my coffee. Let the silence hang. Because right then, I knew. I had already won something more valuable than a pension bump. I had options. I didn't take the offer. Not because it wasn't tempting. Hell, the money Todd floated across the table would have covered 2 years of mortgage payments, but because accepting it would have meant giving him what he wanted most. Control. He didn't need a consultant. He needed a human shield. Someone who could tell the board, "Don't worry, everything's fine now. The guy who built the system is back." It wasn't a real olive branch. It was camouflage. I stood up after finishing my coffee, shook his hand, and said, "I think we're good where we are, Todd." He didn't try to stop me. I could feel his eyes on my back as I walked out of that overpriced restaurant. The same eyes that had once watched me pack up my things like I was being escorted off the premises. The difference now was I walked away on my terms. No box, no shame, just the calm of a man who understood leverage better than his former boss ever would. 2 months later, the company missed Q4 projections again. Not by a hair this time, by a full percentage point and a half. The stock took another hit. Analysts tore them apart. Todd didn't appear on the earnings call. His resignation was announced in a bland press release the following Monday morning. To pursue other opportunities. I printed it out and stuck it to the wall in my garage. Not out of spite, just as a reminder. Around the same time, my pension-linked equity pool triggered a reset. With Todd gone and a new leadership team installed, there was renewed pressure to clean house and stabilize. Ironically, that meant my shares rebounded. Slowly, but steadily. The fund didn't make me rich, but it gave me something even rarer in this world. Quiet closure. A few weeks after Todd's exit, I got a handwritten card in the mail. It was from Rachel. All it said was, "Told you the walls would crack. Proud of you, R. Dot." I smiled and put it next to the press release. These days, I work for myself. Small contracts, selective clients, and a lot more peace. I pick my daughter up from preschool without checking Slack. I eat dinner with my wife without a phone on the table. My calendar has a white space in it again, and when people ask me if I miss the old job, I just say, "Not really, it missed me first." Some people want revenge that explodes, courtroom battles, fiery endings, big headlines. I didn't need that. I just needed them to feel my absence long enough to know they couldn't replace it. That loyalty can't be faked, and betrayal doesn't always shout when it wins. Sometimes it walks away quietly, with its pension intact and its dignity unbroken. And sometimes it watches from a distance, as the empire that pushed it out slowly forgets how to run without it.